Good morning, folks, and welcome to Hot Topic and Fresh News. Today, on the 31st of March, 2024, we're bringing you the latest and most pressing news stories. Over in Baltimore, Maryland, cleanup crews and engineers have begun the mammoth task of removing the collapsed sections of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. A cargo vessel's collision into the supports of the bridge caused this unprecedented catastrophe. This undertaking includes the use of 7 floating cranes, 10 tugboats, 9 barges, 8 salvage vessels, and 5 Coast Guard boats. As we speak, workers are meticulously measuring and cutting the twisted steel from the collapsed bridge, preparing to lift the debris onto flat-bottomed barges. The Governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, has underscored the complexity of this operation and the paramount importance of the first movement of the wreckage. The immediate goal here is to restore a smaller channel for the movement of tugboats and small barges, stabilize the site, and enable divers to search for the 4 missing individuals presumed to be dead. The economic ramifications of this bridge collapse are staggering, with about 15,000 jobs related to daily port operations in Baltimore currently on hiatus. The aftermath of this event is impacting roll-on, roll-off, vehicle imports and exports of farm and construction equipment, as Baltimore is the largest U.S. port for such operations. The federal government has already allocated an initial sum of $1 million for debris clearance and bridge rebuilding. President Joe Biden has assured that the federal government will cover all costs related to the debris removal and bridge reconstruction. These are the critical developments for now, and we'll delve into more detailed analysis and discussion later in the show. Stay tuned to Hot Topic and Fresh News for the most recent and in-depth news coverage. Hello there, good people. This is your host, Emily, greeting you from the heart of New York City. Welcome to another episode of Hot Topic and Fresh News, your daily dose of fresh, hot-off-the-press news. Joining us from the other side of the country, we have our ever-insightful commentator, David. Based in San Francisco, he's got his finger on the pulse of all the major stories, ready to share his expertise and analysis. Isn't that right, David?
Absolutely, Emily. I can't wait to dive into today's news. It's a wild world out there, and there's so much to discuss.
That's what we love to hear, David. To all our listeners tuning in, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and share the love by sending this podcast to your friends and family. Your support helps keep us on air and bring you the latest, most relevant news every single day. And if you have any comments or questions, we'd love to hear them. So, don't be shy, drop us a line. Now on to today's headline. Though I've been in the news business for 2 decades, I can safely say I've never seen something quite like this. The collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The magnitude of the event, the massive cleanup operation, and the impact it's having on the economy and those 15,000 jobs, it's all truly astounding. We're about to dive deep into this developing story, and trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. So stay tuned because it's hot off the press.
Can you shed some light on the removal process of the collapsed bridge?
Sure. The removal process involves cutting and lifting sections of the wreckage. Workers are using a cutting torch to slice through the thick beams of the collapsed structure. Each movement is crucial as it dictates the next step and overall timeline for restoration.
And what about the equipment being used in this operation?
The cleanup efforts involve a massive fleet of machinery, 7 floating cranes, 10 tugboats, 9 barges, 8 salvage vessels, and 5 Coast Guard boats. They're working in sync to manage the wreckage and restore movement in the area.
Sounds complicated. What are the initial goals of the salvage team?
The immediate aims are to open up a smaller channel for the movement of tugboats and small barges and stabilize the site. This will allow divers to continue their search for the 4 missing people who are presumed dead.
But there's no clear timeline for these objectives, correct?
Exactly. The Governor of Maryland, Wes Moore, emphasized that the process wouldn't take hours or even days. It's complex and could take longer, but the completion of this phase will allow for more resources to accelerate the recovery process.
The crumpled part of the bridge on the cargo vessel hasn't been addressed yet. right?
Correct. As of now, workers are not attempting to clean up the part of the bridge that rests on the bow of the Dali, the Singapore-flagged container ship that caused the collapse.
And the economic impact of this entire incident is significant.
Indeed. About 15,000 jobs revolving around daily port operations are currently on pause. The situation impacts roll-on, roll-off vehicle imports and exports of farm and construction equipment, as Baltimore is the largest U.S. port for such operations. The ripple effect is considerable.
So what's the financial plan for the cleanup and restoration?
Well, the federal government has stepped in, initially awarding Maryland an emergency relief of $25 million to clear the debris and begin rebuilding the key bridge. U.S. President Joe Biden has also assured that the federal government will cover all costs related to the removal of debris and reconstruction of the bridge.
That's a significant commitment. Now, considering how vital Baltimore's port is, especially for the roll-on, roll-off vehicle imports and exports, how might this bridge collapse impact the global economy?
The full extent remains to be seen. However, with 15,000 jobs on hold, and the port being vital for vehicle imports and exports of farm and construction equipment, we can anticipate a certain ripple effect. This incident does not just affect Baltimore or the U.S., but potentially the international trade industry as a whole.
A truly global impact, then.
Yes, this story is far from over, and we're going to keep a close eye on it as it develops. But for now, that's the latest on the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. We'll be back to update you with more insights in our next episode. Stay tuned. Thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of Hot Topic and Fresh News. We dove deep into the situation unfolding in Baltimore, discussing the bridge collapse and its potential implications. Your support and engagement mean the world to us. So don't forget to subscribe, activate notifications, and leave us a comment. And if you found our conversation insightful, please share it with your friends, family, and fellow news enthusiasts.
And remember, we're here every day, dissecting the latest news and trends for you. So always keep us on your radar. And who knows, you might even impress your friends with your newfound knowledge at your next dinner party.
We're grateful to have you as part of our Hot Topic and Fresh News community, and are looking forward to our next discussion.
Absolutely. I can't wait to find out what we'll be unpacking next time. But until then, as we always say, Emily and David, stay in the loop, keep your eyes on the news. Our channel's content will amuse.